Hello and welcome to the HDMV Animated Buttons, an Easier Way, the movie. Step 1. 3 buttons were created in Sony Vegas: normal state, the selected state, and the active state. The next step in Photoshop is to run the script Scenarist Target. This will create the target document. Step 2 is to import the rendered files into Photoshop. This is with the Load Files into Stack Photoshop script. Remember to load the buttons in reverse order because of the way they're placed in the target document. So we select all the images for, in this case, the setup button, and then we say OK. And now Photoshop will create layers from these files with the file name. The next thing to do is to make any changes necessary to this particular button and all the layers. In this case, everything is ready to go because it was rendered from Vegas with a transparent background. So first I select all the button layers and then we run the script Scenarist Buttons. We enter in the number of layers for each state of the button. In this case 15 because each state was created with a half-second. Put in a button name so it will be easy to work with in IGEdit. And now Photoshop will go through and rename all the states according to the Scenarist format, and then it will copy that entire group into the target document. I will delete this item, actually close it and don't save it. This will take us back to the target document, and as we can see, it now has that button there underneath the first page. After this, it's just a matter of repeating step 2, which is running files into stack, picking up the next button, which in this case is extras. And again, I have no changes to make to this button, so I will select all of the layers and run Scenarist Button. More reasonable might be having normal as 1, as selected being your animated state, and then active might be 1, or perhaps animated. And Photoshop will do the magic of doing all those renames and moving the button into the target document. Again, we don't need this anymore. And if we come over here and look, we can close the extras button, the one we just put in. And you see below it now is the setup button. And we have one more button to do. So we go back to step 2, load the files from stack, and select the feature button. Of course, as mentioned in the presentation, if your buttons are created a different way, or if your buttons are already in Photoshop, this step would be different. But the same thing is, the buttons need to be in the proper order, that is, the proper state order of normal, selected, active, and then within those states, the layers for the animation of each state in the proper order from top to bottom in the layers stack. Now that Photoshop has brought everything in, go to step 3, running Scenarist Button. This is one of the common things. I do it all the time. I forgot to select the entries. And so as the warning told me, the total number of the layers I entered doesn't match what I selected. So I have to do that again. And unfortunately, as it says in the presentation, the way the scripts work, or at least the way they currently work, you lose everything you put in, so you have to do it all again. Fortunately, there isn't a whole lot to put in. And now that has been renamed and moved over. We'll get rid of this layer, this document, and here we have the feature buttons. We can close this, and we see we have the 3 button overlay groups in the correct order, and under each one of those is the button group with its buttons, with the normal buttons, then the selected, then the active. In the presentation, it was suggested that dummy page and dummy button be added as the first page. I've done that here. It's very simple, of course. Just add the groups and then a layer that has nothing in it. This is to allow switching between pages and or setting which button you wish to return to when you come back from wherever you've been. So the next thing then is to save this. So we'll do a save as. And we've already done this before, so now I've opened IGEdit, and here we will create a new project, and then we will open a Scenarist format PS one we just built. Let's expand this. We can see what we've got. First thing we see is here's our set, and one thing we need to do is to change this to the proper frame rate, which in this case is 30. And we need to make sure that this is non-multiplexed so that it will display properly. It's always on. The init menu, the dummy menu, we need to see here that the init button is the default, which of course is what we want. And if we go to the init button itself, we want to turn on the auto action flag so that it will automatically think it's been activated. The other thing we need to do is over in the code section is to add a line of code. And what this does is it tells it to set the button and page that we wish to display. So button is going to be in GPRM1 in this case. The page is 1. This is a constant one. We could put a GPRM there as well if we wish to, but in this case there's no need for it. We go down to the main menu now. One thing we need to set is the animation frame code. This number appears to indicate how many frames each image will use. And in this case, it's real time, so 1 means 1 frame per image. If you have fewer images, you might need to set this number a little higher. If we go look at a button, here is the feature button. And if we can see, normal, selected, and active reference numbers are different because we have animation. And here are the images for that animation. We could set the repeat flag to true if you wish the animation to repeat, but in this case, I want it just to do it once, so we'll leave it at false. I'll set the button navigation. As you can see, the names in the select list are in the correct order, and that is because we put them in the Photoshop in top-down order, so that's the order they were read by IGEdit. And there is no left and right. The other thing we need to do with the button is to put in some code to tell the system what to do when the button is active, just as we did with the init button. In this case, we're going to move a 1 into GPRM1, which, remember, that was our button indicator, and then we're going to jump to an object number 1. It's a very simple process. Generally, the buttons won't have much to them. One thing you need to always do is do a compile anytime you enter or modify the commands. Now I'll go set up the other buttons. Okay, I did the other 2 buttons. They were basically the same thing with the navigation, and the code is the same, except that the value we put in GPRM1 is different. Remembering that the buttons are 0-based numbers. The first button, when we come back from that, we want to go to the next button, which would be 1. And then button 1, we want to go to 2, so I changed that move to 2. And now in setup, we want it to go back to feature, which happens to be button number 0. So as you can see, there's a 0 there instead of a 2. And that takes care of everything in IGEdit. So what we need to do now is to export the PES file. I've already done that, so we'll just put it in the same place. And then to save the project. And again, this is the same name. And that's it for IGEdit. I've opened up our project in DSA for a quick look at the setup for those who may not be all that familiar with it. The audio-video segments are, as we know, from a BDJ disc. Nothing new there. The new item is the subpath segments. This is where our menu is, or any of your menus. It might be more than one. And here we see the PES file and the IG project file. The playlists are the same, except if you have a HDMV menu, you drag and drop it into the particular playlist that you wish it to be in. In this case, here is our main menu in the menu item. Remember that all BD menus have to have a video playing in the background that they actually show on top of. So that's what we have here. If we had a pop-up menu for our feature, then that would go on one of the other playlists. In this case, we don't, so that one is standard. One item we must set is in the BDJ menu. Let's be sure to set Disable DSA BDJ menu, and that will drop all the BDJ entries, all the Java. In this area, the loading screen might as well be set to blank because it's not used in HDMV. The title setup is a little different. We need to change these two items. In this case, they're both to menu. Don't have much choice. The first play might be your FBI warning screen or logos or whatever. And here we can also have the top menu. So if someone presses top menu on the remote, this is where they will go. We do have access to that in the HDMV. The other item is the movie object editor. This is object 0, and all it does is it plays the playlist 1000, which is our menu. So in this case, we have to know the playlist numbers. And then we do a go to label 0. For some reason, I don't get the first characters here. So you have to know the playlist number, and you have to know the movie object number if you deal with objects, which is what we do in movie object 1. In this case, we do the playlist 1001, which is our movie, and then we jump back to object 0, which takes us back to the menu. If you remember, we set a GPRM in the menu for each button with a number that would tell the menu which button to indicate as selected. So this is very simple. It could be a lot more complicated than that. The other thing is our menu, which is our title number 1. And notice here we have the movie object number of 0. We add titles by right-clicking on there and just add a title. They are added in numerical order. If you delete one, then the ones after it get renumbered, which can be a problem because if you reference titles, then the numbers may not be correct. We have the same problem with the movie objects. They're created in numeric order. So if you delete one in the middle, all the ones below it get renumbered. So if you specify object somewhere, then that will be incorrect. So you have to keep track of 3 different numbers: the playlist, the movie object, and the title number. And in the Exports Corner real world 3D example, he mentions making a list of all your titles and such so that you can keep track of which number goes where. He also recommends to first start by building the DSA part before you go to the menus, because you need some of those numbers in the menu button commands. Well, that's about it for DSA and actually this whole presentation. The zip file contains the complete project and the PSD file that we built. So using that, you can use any software player to play the disc, or you could burn a disc if you wish to do so. As we said, it doesn't do much. It just allows you to walk through the buttons and see what they look like in animation, and also see what the active button does. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this helped.